More on that must be left to the reading of the book. In the meantime, here is what can be accomplished by those who know the truth. Those who have not engaged in a taxable activity, or have not done so to the extent of gains beyond the statutory exemption amount, generally owe no income taxes for the relevant period, regardless of the amount of money earned. In such cases, knowledgeably acting to correct any erroneous information return allegations about one's earnings establishes that fact legally. In most cases in which money has been withheld or paid in, or is available as a credit from a previous year, knowledgeably correcting erroneous information return allegations and presenting an appropriate claim establishes legally that everything withheld or paid in is to be refunded. And I mean everything. Social Security and Medicare contributions included. What you're seeing right now are refunds secured by readers of Cracking the Code, thanks to corrections and claims submitted over the last 18 months or so. Some of these thoroughly educated Americans have secured as many as a dozen such refunds so far. Also displayed here are Treasury Department transcripts showing zero balances for readers' accounts, levy releases, garnished money reimbursements, notice of deficiency closing notices, and every other kind of beneficial consequence that can result from a complete knowledge of the Internal Revenue laws. The more than $1 million in recovered and retained property shown here has returned to, or remained in, the pockets of Americans from all walks of life, including teachers and truckers, doctors and lawyers, nurses, engineers, CPAs, students, etc. And what is displayed here is just the tip of the iceberg. Only a fraction of the readers of Cracking the Code who have recovered property withheld against the possibility of tax liabilities which did not actually exist have generously furnished me with images of their checks and other documents for posting, both here and on my website, losthorizons.com. Many more have reported their successes in knowledgeably invoking the law, but didn't think to scan the resulting checks and notices. Many more still have doubtless enjoyed similar successes, but not communicated the fact to me at all. There are, after all, many thousands of copies of Cracking the Code in circulation now. The book is currently in its 6th printing. Copies can be found in libraries around the country. Cracking the Code is even being read in Australia, Eastern Europe, Canada, and Japan. LostHorizons.com logs more than 1.2 million Cracking the Code related hits each and every month. The refunds you're viewing range in size from as much as $75,150 down to as little as $1, which actually began as a 70-cent claim, but was rounded up under the rules of the state tax agency to which it was submitted. That little check, and the many other very modest refunds on display here, illustrate a very important aspect of this whole subject, which is that those who act on their new knowledge of what the law really says and means, and why it says and means what it does, are not acting for the sake of the money. They are acting on behalf of the rule of law, and in the understanding that the framers of our federal Constitution expressly intended that the government they created not be provided with the kind of open spigot of revenue into the Treasury which general ignorance, or apathy, regarding the truth about the income tax represents. The framers laid down rules by which the federal government is perfectly capable of financing any expense, whether of necessity or frivolity, but only by means of politically accountable and politically responsive processes. These processes include apportioned direct taxes, suitable and historically called upon for the financing of rare calamitous expenditures, such as become necessary as a consequence of war or natural disasters, as well as revenue tariffs and similar excises for the financing of routine, ongoing federal operations. On the other hand, income taxation in the manner that has become the current reality for Americans who remain ignorant of the relevant law's details was specifically prohibited by the framers, and remains constitutionally prohibited to this day. Readers of Cracking the Code act out of respect for the framers' intentions, to uphold the basic principle that property belongs to he who creates or earns it, and to enforce the simple fact that, under our system of government, and any proper system of government, the people are not subjects to be tapped for revenue at the government's pleasure, with only a choice of rulers every now and then. It will come as no surprise to you, having seen what you have seen, and having learned what you have learned watching this film so far, that the IRS has been vigorously trying to suppress cracking the code, and to discourage those who read the book from acting on their new knowledge, since the very moment the book first became available in August of 2003. Repeated efforts to have the book ordered off the market by federal judges have been defeated already, but that hasn't discouraged the tax agency, which recognizes what this book means to its long-standing control over a huge percentage of the earnings and wealth of most Americans. Even now, and even while quietly continuing to issue refunds and otherwise honor the filings of Cracking the Code readers every week year-round, the IRS is engaged in a massive public relations blitz attacking the book and me personally. In fact, the agency has gone so far as to launch a highly publicized, but utterly bizarre, lawsuit against my wife and me, in which it is arguing that refunds made to us for 2002 and 2003 were issued in error, and the agency wants our money back in its hands, despite the fact that the official Department of Treasury certificates of assessment for those years declare that no tax was, or is, due. That this lawsuit is no more than a publicity stunt is further emphasized by the fact that the IRS and state and local tax agencies continue to make precisely the same kind of refunds to Americans all across the country, day in and day out, without interruption. Details about these turn-back-the-tide efforts to preserve the ignorance of the law by which the agency, and its clients, have benefited so handsomely for decades now, can be found at losthorizons.com. I'm going to close this film with a few comments by readers of Cracking the Code, whose ranks I hope you'll choose to join. I especially hope that, after you read the book, you'll also choose to join us in standing up for the rule of law, by insisting that your servant governments abandon their long-standing efforts to encourage and exploit ignorance about the true nature of the income tax. Thank you for your time.